Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Way to Wow shows for, the Thanksgiving holiday 2025. So Thanksgiving is actually tomorrow, but I'm as I do sometimes, I do the show the day before, so you can be enjoying the holiday with family and friends and enjoying those great Thanksgiving traditions like watching football and the I Love Lucy marathon. So the year seemed to zoom by. There's a little over a month left, and here we are at Thanksgiving. I think this is one of the most meaningful holidays in the United States. I think it really gets to the essence of what this country is all about. People may say, well, Independence Day is more apt in that regard. I don't agree with that. While it's great to celebrate America's independence from Great Britain, much of America's ability to win her independence came from Americans working together and being grateful for the opportunity that was afforded to them by this country. And so when I think of the quintessential American holiday, it is indeed Thanksgiving. And I'm not aware of other countries that have a similar day. Now, some people will say, well, every day is Thanksgiving. We should be giving thanks to God every day. And there is some truth to that. Nonetheless, I think it's valuable to take one day out of the year on which we truly focus on being grateful, giving thanks, gathering together with other people to do so. In former times, I used to do big Thanksgiving meals, usually in the kind of mid to late afternoon, sometimes as many as 20 people. All the food was kosher. So anybody who kept the Jewish dietary laws, or not anybody, but many of the people who did, they came to my house so they could have kosher turkey and sweet potatoes with brown sugar and mini marshmallows and corn chowder with smoked salmon and all those delectable treats. And before I would let them have dessert, I always insisted that we sing a song, America the Beautiful, or My Country 'Tis of Thee, or a similar song, in recognition that the day was not just about being together with family or eating a lot of great food or even watching football or I Love Lucy, but it was there for us to express gratitude. And we always started out the meal with a prayer of thanksgiving. When my friends Cliff and Lori lived in Los Angeles, Cliff is he's an outstanding writer, and Cliff would typically write and give the Thanksgiving prayer. They were always very moving. And so I encourage the creation of similar traditions as part of your Thanksgiving celebration. So as is the case for all the special editions, I like to talk about the history of the day that we're celebrating, or in this case, we'll be celebrating tomorrow, and then do a reading. And so I'm going to talk about the history of Thanksgiving, and the reading for this year is Abraham Lincoln's Proclamation of Thanksgiving. Excuse me, which I think Abraham Lincoln's speeches are among the most moving of any American, and so hopefully you will find it. You will be inspired. Okay, so in the other great fall tradition, I'm a little bit under the weather. So the history of Thanksgiving Day in the United States is a blend of faith, survival, national identity. I think these are some of the ideas that come forward. The sort of apocryphal first Thanksgiving in 1621 with the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Indians took place at Plymouth Colony in what is now the state of Massachusetts. The settlers had endured a hazardous voyage aboard the Mayflower and had celebrated their first successful harvest with a 3-day festival. They were joined by members of the Wampanoag tribe, led by Chief Massasoit, who brought food, who shared agricultural knowledge, and had helped the Pilgrims adapt to the local environment. It may sound strange in light of the future history between colonists and Indians, or what are often known as Native Americans. But at this point in history, the Wampanoag, sorry, I'm saying it wrong. The Wampanoag did not view the colonists as a threat and help them in their struggle to survive. So this 3-day gathering, which included not just eating, but there were games and other amusements. This is really the source of the term Thanksgiving, although the term was not used. It was not referred to as Thanksgiving Day. It was a day to express gratitude to God, and so that's where the idea of a Thanksgiving came. The kind of the historical context of it was the first winter had been very brutal. Nearly half of the original colonists had died through disease or malnutrition. And it was only really through the assistance and alliance with the Wampanoag that the colony survived. And so this was a shared harvest of gratitude, cooperation, and hope. Would that those sentiments, continued for the next 400 years. So early colonial Thanksgivings during the period of the Puritans' greatest influence in the United States, 17th century, 1600s. So the settlers in New England were Puritans. They frequently declared small d days of small t Thanksgiving to mark specific events, the end of droughts, military victories, successful harvests. These occasions were primarily religious, and they emphasized prayer and fasting and reflection rather than large feasts. And it's interesting that the contrast in practices between the Puritans, who were looking to strip down religious observance to kind of its bare bones, as opposed to what you would see among Jews, for example, where holidays that have an aspect of Thanksgiving to them always include food and not dancing and those kinds of merrymaking, but getting together with family, relatives, members of one's community, sharing good food, good drink, etc. So the early Thanksgivings reinforced the Puritan sense of communal identity and spiritual dependence on God for their survival. And they really intertwined gratitude with their religious observances. So during the Revolutionary era, now on into the 18th century, and the first national Thanksgiving, It was declared by the Continental Congress in 1777, and it was to celebrate the Patriots' victory at the Battle of Saratoga. And during this period, too, there was no particular set schedule of Thanksgiving observances. They were sort of declared when Congress thought they were appropriate. And they reflected moments of national importance rather than a fixed holiday. So if you saw last year's Thanksgiving special, so George Washington made a Thanksgiving proclamation in 1789. It was the first national proclamation of Thanksgiving. And it was when George Washington was president. And the proclamation was issued on November 26, 1789. And he called for a day of thanksgiving and prayer. And it was an expression of gratitude for the successful establishment of the U.S. Constitution and essentially the formation of a government for the newly independent colonies and the blessings afforded to this fledgling nation. So even at this point, though, Thanksgiving was not an annual tradition. Subsequent presidents, from time to time, issued proclamations of Thanksgiving, but there was no set national date. So the campaign for a national holiday was waged by a woman named Sarah Josepha Hale. So she was a remarkable figure in the 19th century, the 1800s, best known as the mother of Thanksgiving for having waged what ended up being successful decades-long campaign to establish Thanksgiving as a national holiday. So Sarah Hale was born on October 24, 1788 in Newport, New Hampshire, not Rhode Island, Newport, New Hampshire. She was largely taught, an avid reader, and she began writing poetry and essays at a young age. And her literary interests really shaped her career and her influence on American culture. So in 1813, she was Sarah Josepha originally. Sarah Josepha married David Hale, and they had 5 children. Now, that wasn't the eye-popping number back then that it is now. And despite many personal challenges, including the death of 2 of her children, which again, unfortunately, was not uncommon, especially in the early 19th century, she continued her literary pursuits. So she was, as I mentioned a moment ago, a poet and a writer, a prolific poet and author. She published collections of poetry, novels, advice books aimed particularly at women and families. She edited a magazine called Goody's Ladies Book. It was one of the most influential women's magazines of the 19th century, and she was editor for 40 years, from 1837 to 1877. And under her leadership, the magazine expanded to reach a national audience. She promoted education, moral instruction, and what were called domestic arts. These were things like cookery, what they called cookery, cooking, sewing, those in other words, the skills that were necessary in order to create a warm and loving home. She championed women writers and artists, and through Goody's Ladies Book, she gave them a prominent platform. So as an advocate for a national Thanksgiving holiday, Hale believed that a unified national holiday would foster unity in a divided country. And if you think about the time period, what we call sometimes the antebellum period, which is the pre-Civil War period, there was growing dissension in the United States over the issue of slavery, states' rights, and other economic and social issues. So as part of her campaign, she wrote letters to 5 U.S. presidents, including William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, and Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's response in 1863 during the Civil War was to issue a proclamation establishing the last Thursday in November as a national day of Thanksgiving, fulfilling Hale's vision. And it was because of her tireless advocacy for this National Day of Thanksgiving that she became known as the Mother of Thanksgiving. So other contributions that Sarah Hale made included education and women's rights. She promoted public education, especially for women. Historic preservation. She campaigned to preserve George Washington's home, Mount Vernon, and set a precedent for historic preservation in the United States. And she had an extensive literary influence through her writing and editorial work. She shaped American domestic culture, and she promoted the ideals of morality, family life, and what she probably would have called civic virtue. We tend to think of it as civic responsibility, but in any case, this idea that one has a responsibility to one's community. So Sarah Josepha Hale died on April 30th, 1879 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, leaving behind a legacy as one of the truly great women of the 19th century. So, as I mentioned a moment ago, Thanksgiving was officially established in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln. He issued a proclamation, which I'm going to read in just a short while, declaring the last Thursday of November as a national day of Thanksgiving and prayer. His intention was to foster unity in what was a badly divided country at war between North and South, fostering unity, healing, gratitude during this tremendously bloody period in American history. And his proclamation laid the foundation for what has become the enduring national holiday that we celebrate tomorrow. In more modern times, mid 20th century, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, during the Great Depression, moved Thanksgiving to the third Thursday of November to lengthen the holiday shopping season, a decision that was widely controversial and dubbed Franksgiving. And so in 1941, Congress officially established Thanksgiving as being on the fourth Thursday in November, and cementing Thanksgiving Day's place in the American calendar. So while early Thanksgiving, small T Thanksgiving practices centered on prayer and reflection and community gatherings rather than elaborate feasting, today, right, I think we all know many of the traditional elements of a Thanksgiving celebration. They include a turkey with stuffing, cranberry sauce. I make my bourbon cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, pecan pie. All of these became staples over the sort of latter half of the 19th and 20th century. Many people have other things. I know I've variously served venison at a Thanksgiving meal in addition to turkey. For those of you who don't keep kosher, I understand you serve ham. which I understand is delicious. It certainly smells good. Green beans is another, I think, Thanksgiving staple. I could sit here and you know, yams and sweet potatoes and mashed potatoes, and I could roll off the food. You know, if you watch Jiggers's Place, you know that I'm a foodie. Another one of the traditions of Thanksgiving is the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which was launched in 1924, so 101 years ago this year, and it's become a symbol of American pageantry and festivity. People holding the lines, towing the balloons down the street in New York. Football has become a part of Thanksgiving tradition as well, dating back even farther than the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade into the late 1800s. And it remains a part of the holidays' sort of social fabric. And then, of course, there are the more frivolous, which is Black Friday, which is the Friday after Thanksgiving when stores used to much more officially launch the holiday shopping season. Nowadays, it seems like Black Friday keeps starting earlier and earlier with pre-Black Friday sales. So, you know, from its roots in the 17th century as a day with a more religious context to it, and one much more involved with prayer and community, through its and unity with Native Americans, through its initial declaration by George Washington, our first president, and then on into the mid-19th century with arguably our greatest president declaring it officially a national holiday. The mix of religious traditions, feasting, cultural events, popular cultural events. Thanksgiving remains, I think, a day of the year that to which Americans look forward. They travel to be with family and friends. I've heard reports in the business news over the last few days that this Thanksgiving will see the largest number of travelers ever. Something like, I don't know, 18 million people just flying, not to mention all those driving. I know as a child, we sometimes drove to various places to have Thanksgiving with family and friends. And you know, at a time when our country seems to be more divisive than perhaps it was 30 years ago, I hope we will all take the opportunity to be thankful, certainly for the people we love, and with the people, and for the people with whom we agree, but also for the people that we struggle to love because we disagree with them so vehemently. I would encourage all to, you know, set aside political discussions and to join in the spirit of the day, which is gratitude and unity, and celebrating all the things in this country for which we have to be thankful. So I'm going to read the transcript for President Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving proclamation from 3 October 1863. Okay. By the President of the United States, a proclamation. The year is drawing toward its close. The year that is drawing toward its close has been filled with the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies. To these bounties, which are so constantly enjoyed that we are prone to forget the source from which they come, others have been added, which are of so extraordinary a nature that they cannot fail to penetrate and even soften the heart, which is habitually insensible to the ever watchful providence of Almighty God. In the midst of a civil war of unequal magnitude and severity, which has sometimes seemed to foreign states to invite and provoke their aggressions, peace has been preserved with all nations, order has been maintained, the laws have been respected and obeyed, and harmony has prevailed everywhere except in the theater of military conflict, while that theater has been greatly contracted by the advancing armies and navies of the Union. Needful diversions of wealth and of strength from the fields of peaceful industry to the national defense have not arrested the plow, the shuttle, or the ship. The axe has enlarged the borders of our settlements and the mines, as well as of iron and coal, as of the precious metals, have yielded even more abundantly than heretofore. Population has steadily increased, notwithstanding the waste that has been made in the camp, the siege, and the battlefield, and the country, rejoicing in the consciousness of augmented strength and vigor, is permitted to expect continuance of years with large increase of freedom. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, has nevertheless remembered mercy. It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged as with one heart and one voice by the whole American people. I do, therefore, invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And I recommend to them that, while offering up the ascriptions justly due to him for such singular deliverances and blessings, they do also, with humble penitence for our national perverseness and disobedience, commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes to the full enjoyment of peace, harmony, tranquility, and union. In testimony whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington, the 3rd of October, in the year of our Lord, 1863, and of the independence of the United States, the 88th. Abraham Lincoln, by the President, William H. Seward, Secretary of State. For those of you who are familiar with others of Abraham Lincoln's writings, I think you see either echoes or precursors to speeches that were and proclamations that were made before and after the Gettysburg Address, the second inaugural address, the first inaugural address. All of these, you can see similar sentiments, and you can see President Lincoln's concern for his fellow citizens and his great pain at having to preside over the nation during a time of such havoc, where the killing fields sometimes seemed beyond imagination. If we can remember the truly difficult times through which this country has come. The war for independence, the Civil War, World War II, the struggle to end slavery, and the struggle for the franchise for more Americans, and how far we've come. Hopefully, we can take at least one day off from any feelings of disappointment in our great nation, and remember that for so many people in this world, America remains a beacon of freedom, liberty, however you would voice it, a place to which they aspire to come and make a better life for themselves and their families. This is what we celebrate on Thanksgiving Day, in addition to giving thanks to God, from whom all things come. And so I'll close by wishing you, your family, your loved ones, friends, a very, very happy Thanksgiving, one of meaning, one of unity. And signing off as I always do, to my dear one, Marie, you are my bell. Courage at all times, my friends.